surf coach, I love helping people progress faster, and much of this comes from knowing what the correct action steps are for the surfers at the exact stage of their surfing. In this video, I've got something which may drastically improve your surfing today, and it's thanks to one of our members at Longboard Sessions, Jonathan, who submitted his video to the rating application group. And we were able to provide him a customized plan to approach our surf progression framework, which he was more than happy for me to share with you as to what actually eventually allowed him to improve his surfing most, which is really, really exciting. Now, we can see his approach to the waves is fairly good, and he has some great foundations, which makes this really exciting for Jonathan. In his surfer ratings, we scored him really highly on a lot of the fundamentals, which essentially are the building blocks that we need to create consistent improvements up the surfing progression ladder without leaving bad habits, or what we call kinks in the chain, which become more and more apparent as we progress on with our surfing. And we can see that we don't really need to fix his pop-up necessarily or drastically retrain anything major. But Jonathan's surfing goals are towards smoother surfing, turns, and also making his way towards the nose. And he's already got some pretty good barrel attempts in there as well.
Yeah, wow. And he just gets a barrel and gets the pop because of that.
When I'm looking at getting turns right, or even getting the cross-stepping right, I'm always considering the surfer positioning. I think a lot of the time we think about what our body is doing and the mechanics of how we move ourselves, but the root of all the issues is sometimes how we're positioned on the wave and the board. When we think about the longboard, I like to think there's areas where we can gain more speed and less speed. The most common answer people provide me when they think they're going too slowly is that they need to pump, which is fair enough, but this does come from a lot of the information out there which is very shortboard specific and heavy, and unfortunately it's not super applicable to the majority of surfers, I'd say, where we're surfing anything from a mid-length to a longboard. With the added length, we really do need to be considering other approaches. With the shortboard, the reason we can accelerate by just leaning forwards isn't just because the front foot turns on the accelerator, but it's because the front foot so happens to land in the middle of the board. On a longboard or a mid-length though, the distribution of our pressure is altered because the board is obviously bigger, and we can see that Jonathan has a little bit of trouble with two things on the wave. The first is speed. And the second is our balance on the wave and the board as well, and getting wobbles towards the end of the wave. The solution for both of these will largely be about positioning on the board. There are some other elements worth focusing on, but what we speak about here will get the majority of the results. Now, because Jonathan is positioned at the tail for the most part, his acceleration is impaired, with his front foot behind the center, which is our location for speed on pretty much all boards. And on longboards, we can see that it is a little bit further forward as well. So what we're getting Jonathan to focus on is bringing himself further forwards when it's appropriate. And this is to gain speed. Now, in this instance, we're not looking to do any major turns or maneuvers, so it's actually not only okay, but encouraged to move forwards. Much of the time, I'm sure a lot of us can resonate this, we're concerned we won't be able to change our position from the middle of the board. And as surfers, we do happen to be so maneuver focused that we hold ourselves back on the tail to wait for the right maneuver, but this is unfortunately killing our opportunity to build speed appropriately to then complete meaningful maneuvers. So this means that our focus for Jonathan specifically is after takeoff, coming to the middle is going to be really important, and after turns, accelerating by coming into the middle. We can see some instances where Jonathan attempts to move forwards as well. However, this here looks to be an attempt to get to the nose rather than a functional redistribution of the weight on the board. And as such, we can see as he moves up, he actually maintains a wide stance and actually misses putting his weight where it matters most for speed and balance, in the center. And here we can also see the wide stance also prevents him from properly getting his weight to the middle for optimal trim, which is another thing we'll be looking to focus on with him with our longboard stance variations. Now, there's another dynamic we need to discuss with this as well, and that's the stability component. If we come back to the shortboard example here, it's more straightforward to gain balance by bringing our weight into the widest point of the board by just leaning forwards into the center. But for a longboard, we run into the same problem. We actually need to physically move ourselves up the board forwards to engage the center and become well balanced. Without this, we actually have the tail engaged, which disengages rail out of the water and makes the board far more wobbly, as you can see in these instances. So from a balance perspective, it's not always about literally having better balance and practicing single leg standing, although that can be helpful. It's about looking at our positioning on the board and on the wave and optimizing that first. And this can be done in Jonathan's case by bringing himself forward up the board. Now, we can see that when we use the center of the board appropriately, our approach to gain speed and balance goes through the roof. This means we're getting caught behind sections less, we're bogging rails less, and we're just smoother overall. So before we get to the exciting stuff of where this is going for Jonathan, if we get Jonathan just focusing on this, we'll get a smoother ride, which really connects the dots more, which is super exciting because again, we're not transforming anything major here. We're simply pointing out that shifting to the middle will have a big, profound effect. And as we work with our surfers at longboard sessions, a big thing we keep harping on about all the time is staying consistent with the focus area. We see that big progression does come from the ability to do the right thing and stick with it before going ahead. And that's what is really common for us, skipping ahead, especially if we're not sure what we're working on is the right thing. It often becomes a matter of throwing 10 different things at the wall to see what sticks, which isn't really effective or efficient for that matter. To bring this to where his surfing will go from here, once we correct this board positioning, we'll be able to hit some really key areas for his improvement to move onwards and upwards. We'd really want to get him looking very confident with his carved beaches and uses of the thirds of the board, which will really improve his wave and board positioning, and therefore his ability to manipulate his position on the wave to wherever he needs to be. And from there, we can then place a larger focus on getting these more exciting maneuvers, such as the cutbacks and nose rides underway. Now, I know that a lot of my job is often helping people to figure out what the next steps are, because if we don't get Jonathan's positioning right first, these bigger goals are going to be made really, really difficult, more and more difficult to attain, more frustrating and all of that. Now, I want to thank all the members who have joined longboard sessions so far. On top of being an incredible platform and community built so you can experience the pinnacles of weightless lifted nose ride and big fast carving turns, it's also a big part of my journey to hopefully one day fulfill my dream of being able to do this full time, create more and more here on YouTube, which will always be free for everyone, and to follow my passion of dedicating myself wholeheartedly to helping others achieve things that they thought they couldn't in surfing, and to also try to get my surfing to the very top of the WSL. Again, thank you so much to everyone who has joined. It means a whole lot, and we'll catch you on the next one.